Hi, I'm Bill Sang, and this is the Bill Sang Podcast. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We have a special offer for anybody who watches all the way through the end of this episode, so please stick around. Don't forget to subscribe and enjoy this episode. So today we're going to be talking about why America matters. And I remember in the last podcast, I mentioned that I want to talk about the things that I'm passionate about, and I really like America a lot, and it's for really good reasons too. It's not just because of just this rah-rah patriotism, but rather the idea that America embodies, that I believe that we should embrace, and just far too many people that are Americans have taken for granted, and far too many people in the world have misunderstood. So I'm going to go through a couple of points to explain why America is so important and why we need to bring America back to its roots. The very first thing I'd like to talk about is how America in itself has become sort of a spiritual reformation in the world of Christianity. Now, what do I mean by that? I know that American Christians take a lot of flack for not being as ready to embrace dependency on other Christians and so forth, being way too independent. But there are a lot of things that American Christians get right, but also American Christianity gets right. For instance, European Christianity prior to American Christianity wasn't working out so well, and we have seen where it has ultimately gone as it has progressed forward. That basically Europe, which was once a very religious continent, has now become very secular on a whole. And but here in America, we are still considered a very religious people. And I think that's in large part because of the founding of this country. First of all, pilgrims fled from Europe to pursue religious liberty, to be able to worship God as they saw fit. And that's fantastic. But what I would also like to add in there is that in these other countries across the world, you would see that just getting a translation of the Bible in your language was dangerous. We see that in Europe that people were killed for trying to translate the Bible into different languages, particularly into English, which of course the King James Version was the first authorized English version of the Bible. Prior to that, there had been translations, and people were indeed killed for making attempts to write a full English version of the Bible. So the Bible has been a very important part of American culture. In fact, that's the basis for all of our laws in America. And I think that that's probably really the first country, aside from the nation of Israel itself, that has based its law and order structure off of what the Bible has to say. We have the freedom to be able to worship freely, so we can go to whatever church we want to, and we do not have to pay some sort of a tax to the government. And it's not our religious functions, our religious ceremonies are not governed by the state in any way, shape, or form. And so we are given this free expression to worship God however we want to. And what that has resulted in throughout the world is that people have gotten so passionate that America has really become a strong launching point for many worldwide missions organizations. All you got to do is mention names like Billy Graham, and already you have an idea of the impact that America has had on the world from a religious perspective, particularly as it relates to Christianity. Furthermore, when it comes to other religions, when people would come to America and they'd bring their religion with them, they would not face persecution. They would not be killed or martyred simply because they hold different religious beliefs. Now, I know there's some history inside the United States where there has been hardships for different types of people. Nonetheless, as an institution, the United States of America has not codified any sort of religious persecution where they've announced that we must go after such and such group of people because of their religious beliefs. And so that's amazing. And I think that it's great that America has in my opinion, hosted this great Reformation where people have been able to determine what they believe based on how they interpret the Bible. And thus, we've had many great religious movements inside of America that have attempted to bring Christianity back to its roots and the church back to its roots as a result. Something else I really like about America, why I think it's important, is America has defied the norms of human history, where most countries are basically content in some sort of poverty. America has embraced a model of economics that promotes prosperity, and it's way different from the rest of the world. Poverty is one of the biggest killers, if not the number one killer in the world in terms of mortalities, because with poverty, there's illnesses, there's just unsanitary street conditions, unsanitary water, and yet America has strove to better the human condition so that people could live at optimal conditions, so that they don't get sick, so that their neighbors aren't sick, so they can live where they want to. And America has enabled people to live the type of lifestyle that they want so that they can prosper. In fact, it's even given people the option, if they so choose, not to prosper. So you're not mandated to prosper, and you're not mandated to live in poverty either. Basically, you're given the freedom to choose whether you want to pursue greatness in your lifetime, or if you don't want people to know who you are in the course of your life. Many other systems throughout the world, they mandate that you even work. And I have nothing against work, but when the government starts mandating that you work, you have to ask, what kind of work are they mandating people do? Where in America, you have a choice to choose whatever type of profession you want, if you want a profession, and to be able to make money to live whatever lifestyle you want to live. Personal identity, having the freedom to be yourself, to be an individual. Most other countries of the world magnify the government over the individual and elevate the greater good over one's personal ideals, over people's dreams and desires for their lives. In America, what's remarkable is that our government system was founded to be such that the people, the common people, were supposed to be the ones who govern. Now, I know that we elect people, we elect representatives, but they're supposed to be just that. They are not really the government per se. They are elected representatives to serve the people in places of government. And so actually the American people are supposed to be the government inside of America, and the people who are elected are simply supposed to carry out the ideals of those who have elected them. Throughout the world, throughout history, it's always been thought that you need the best and the brightest people to come up with ideas to govern the masses, to help them not to make bad decisions. Where in America, the founders took a huge gamble and said, you know what? We think that the average person is smart enough to know how to live their own life. At the very least, we trust that Americans will live lives that will bring, that where they're in pursuit at least, of happiness. And who are we to tell other people what will bring them happiness? And so if you are, for instance, say you're a Christian and going to church and, working on a farm brings you think that'll bring you happiness, you're free to do so. If you don't believe in God and you want to run a big corporation, you're free to do that. If you think that's going to bring you happiness. If you want to drive expensive cars or cheap cars, or if you don't want to drive a car at all, if you want to live out in the country the rest of your life and be Amish, for crying out loud, you're given that option to do so if you believe that that's what's going to bring you happiness. And you don't have to believe it's going to bring you happiness. It just has to be what you choose. And so individuals have value in America. And the way that our system was originally designed was to preserve the rights of individuals, which is another point that's very important as to why I think America is important. The founders acknowledged rights of the people. Now, these rights confuse the rest of the world because most governments dictate what rights people have. Now, what our founders did was brilliant. Inside the Declaration of Independence, they first of all start off with 3 rights that all people were guaranteed from their creator, being God: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And what's even more amazing, after they clarified those 3 rights inside the Declaration of Independence, they then came up with a Bill of Rights, 10 rights that all people were guaranteed under the United States Constitution. Since then, the Constitution has been amended to guarantee other sorts of rights, to make other sorts of laws, and so forth. But the Bill of Rights is probably the most clear outline of what rights cannot be denied of the American people. You find things, like I said before, the freedom to be able to worship. You have the freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom to the right to bear arms, the right to peaceful assembly, to fair and speedy trial, to not have government troops stationed in your home at times of peace. All sorts of guaranteed rights that America gave to its citizens that were not guaranteed throughout history. All you got to do is look at something like World War II, and you see the people living during those times in Europe, they didn't have a whole lot of rights that the government could not infringe upon. And so America has absolutely valued the individual. They have acknowledged that rights are not given to us by government, but by God Almighty. And that is one of the biggest reasons as to why America is so important, because it has acknowledged the Creator in its entire founding. And yet it is granted freedom to believe or not to believe, to prosper or not to prosper, to live in community or to live in isolation, for that matter, even, depending on however you feel it is best to live. Let me share one more thing with you about why I believe America is so important. Innovation. This is pretty remarkable. You've heard of the term American exceptionalism, and there needs to be clarity on that. American exceptionalism is not saying Americans are better or smarter than anybody else in the world. But when we look at innovation, we see something remarkable in the American way of life and what happens when the American ideals are applied to an entire country. Okay? Now, in the past 200 years, we've made technological leaps and bounds that have affected the entire world. When we look at the course of history, we see thousands of years where not very much happened. And in the past 200 years, the difference in how quickly these advancements have been made are so drastic that people have even suggested that maybe mankind in the past 100, 200 years has made contact with extraterrestrial life. Now, I understand why they think that, because like I said, the difference in technology from between 200 years ago and today is astonishing. But what could possibly have created that difference? And I'm going to suggest to you it's exactly that principle of American exceptionalism, but I'm going to put it like this to you. The reason why technology has advanced so far in the past 100 to 200 years is because of freedom. For thousands of years, there has been so much dogma surrounding religion, science, and basically everything else. And plus, people who are in power, they don't like to grant people too much freedom to invent, because who knows, you might invent something that's going to overthrow them and take away their power. Well, guess what? In America, we don't have a king. We don't have somebody who's ruling over us. And because of that, that has opened up all possibilities. Did you know the Wright brothers, for instance, were told by their father that it was blasphemous, heretical, for them to consider the possibility of building a flying machine? Heretical! I mean, that's absolutely wild. But that's an old way of thinking. That is an old dogmatic way of thinking that has been preserved for thousands and thousands of years. When we look at pagan ideology, belief systems, we see that there's so much dogma concerning you don't want to mess with nature because you might be upsetting the gods. In ancient materialism, you saw that they taught that you couldn't make observations that can turn into meaningful inventions because the universe is chaotic. So you can't create laws and rules to understand nature. But in America, that has a Christian foundation and has built a worldview on that foundation, we used science to be able to investigate how great the human potential is and what sorts of inventions we could create to benefit mankind. As a result, we've created systems, we've created new inventions, new technology altogether. We're able to communicate through the air. Right now, we're recording this podcast, and it's going over the internet. And to think about that over 200 years ago, I don't know that it would have been possible. And yet, because of America and its founding, the founders created a place where you could explore all these possibilities. You can benefit off of it, and other people can benefit off of it as well. And we can only imagine how far our technological limits will take us. I love America. I would consider myself a patriot. I hope that this has helped you to understand America, appreciate America, embrace America, and even in your own way, try to preserve the American way of life. Now, before we're done, we told you we were going to give you, the listener, something special at the end of this podcast. So I'm going to share this with you real quick. If you send me a personal message on Facebook, or shoot me an email, or if you even bump into me somewhere and happen to hear this message and you listen to this podcast, if you tell me that you're interested, we will give the first 3 responders a copy of The Chosen DVD. If you've never heard of The Chosen is a TV series on the life of Jesus Christ. So I look forward to hearing back from you. We look forward to giving away this gift to you and blessing you with it. I hope this podcast has done good things for you and you'll be able to bless other people with it. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. My name is Bill Sang, and this has been the Bill Sang Podcast.
Black Swan Blue.